And I remember sitting in the back of that car, and the ambulance was showing up because I could see like the whole front of the house being sort of painted with the red lights of the ambulance.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, oh my God, if I survive this, I'm not going to go spend another 4 years in school right now. Like, I want to go live my life and get into living my life and not risk, I mean, if life can be taken away that quickly, that unexpectedly, then I want to make sure that I'm living the life I want to be living, moment to moment, basically.
Welcome to Stories from Under the Piano. I'm Craig Addy, your host. I'm the musician who listens to the listener. This podcast offers a glimpse into the world of Under the Piano, an immersive musical experience I've been providing for 15 years. Over 1,000 people have discovered comfort, connection, and healing through these sessions, lying under my grand piano. In each podcast episode, a guest shares a personal story, and I respond with a spontaneous piano piece that evokes the emotions and mood of their story. My mission is to connect, comfort, and inspire through the universal language of music. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let's dive in. Well, here we are for another episode of Stories from Under the Piano, and I am delighted to have my guest, Gabrielle Senza. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much, Craig. It's great to be here.
Yes, and it's so great to see you again. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. I've missed you, actually. We got to see each other a lot for a while there.
Yeah,
nice.
Well, things change, and things can change in either direction, so who's to say?
Exactly.
What will happen in the future. I'd love to see more of you. So let's start. I'm just going to read a short little description of you so our listeners can get a sense of what you're about, and then we'll go right into the story. Gabrielle Senza is a multidisciplinary artist, educator, and empowerment coach dedicated to fostering creative engagement for social and environmental change. Her award-winning work is included in prestigious collections such as MoMA, New York, and the Whitney Museum. She believes deeply in the transformative power of art to heal, inspire, and create meaningful change in the world. I love that. Anything else to add?
Oh, there's so much to add. I wanted to keep it short.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, there'll be time after we did the music for you to talk about everything that you're up to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So let's dive into the story. What's your story?
Okay. So you asked for sort of a pivotal moment in my life. And I would say I've had a lot of really pivotal moments in my life, let's say. However, this one was really significant. So I'll set the scene. I grew up in New Hampshire on a lake in New Hampshire, actually not far from one of your other guests that was on your show recently, which was an amazing coincidence. Sue Kaplan, yeah. She's from the same Lebanon, New Hampshire area. So I grew up on a lake in Enfield, New Hampshire. And we used to predominantly heat with firewood, like we had a wood stove and we were always cranking up the wood stove and, tamping it down at night so that it would like keep us warm all night and everything. So that's the setup, the winter. And I remember very clearly, I must have been in 10th or 11th grade, and I was making a very detailed list about all the colleges I wanted to really check out. And so I was going through the Insider's Guide to Colleges, and I was making my, notes on a big yellow legal pad, right? Pen to paper. Remember those days? So I naturally am a night owl. I'm a night owl, so I love staying up really late. And so here I am staying up really late, making my list, getting very excited about like, what could school look like? What could college look like? Where do I want to be? And all that kind of thing. And so eventually it got pretty cold in the house, and I didn't want to wake everybody up. So I just went downstairs and I flipped the switch for the fuel, the oil furnace. and then popped back upstairs and continued my work for a while. And at a certain point, it was pretty late and I started feeling tired. And so I laid down in my bed and was, falling asleep. But I was also noticing it's like, wow, I am like really tired. I'm like melting into the mattress here.
Mm.
And I'm dead tired. That's so weird. I'm not usually like that, but whatever. So I don't know how long it was before the next thing that I knew is that one of my brothers like popped in through the door and he's like, "Oh my God, something's going on. Call our neighbor." And I was like, what's happening? And he said, "Scott, our other brother, a little brother, just passed out downstairs in the kitchen and mom passed out in the kitchen and I don't know what's going on." And I was like, "Oh my God." And the phone was literally like within arm's reach, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
but I could not pick up my arm. I could not move. And it was so disorienting. And then, so by a miracle, a bunch of small miracles, that one brother, he'd been the only person sleeping in the house with his door closed and the window open a little bit. But the rest of us were being poisoned by carbon monoxide and we were all losing consciousness. And he, here come the emotions. So he somehow managed to make the phone call to our neighbor. And you know how when things happen, there are all these sort of strange and miraculous things. So one of the strange things was that for the first time in a very odd, I don't know why, but we had locked our door. Usually we kept it unlocked 24/7.
Right.
So it had been locked and, well, I don't know, a couple other things. So as the story goes, of course, I wasn't down there to witness it, but as it was told, it's like my brother made the phone call. The neighbor got to the house and she was trying to open the door. And he was standing in front of her on the other side of the door, but he was losing consciousness too.
Oh, gee.
And somehow they got the door open and then she like I don't know who, somebody dragged me down the stairs and dragged my brother and our mom out of the house and into the neighbor's car. And we were waiting for the ambulance to arrive. And I remember sitting in the back of that car and the ambulance was showing up because I could see like the whole front of the house being sort of painted with the red lights of the ambulance.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, if I survive this, I'm not going to go spend another 4 years in school right now. Like, I want to go live my life and get into living my life and not risk, I mean, if life can be taken away that quickly, that unexpectedly, then I want to make sure that I'm living the life I want to be living, moment to moment, basically. So obviously we survived. Here I am. We all survived that incredible story, that situation. What had happened is the furnace, the chimney had sort of collapsed down and then was just filtering all of the carbon monoxide back into the house instead of out of the house. And it was odd because we had just had it cleaned and it should have been functioning properly, but you never know with those things. So that was the story. It was just so kind of terrifying and interesting to me because I was so excited about going to college at that time. And that incident was just like, because I also knew that I wanted to go live in Europe and I wanted to, be an artist and do all of these things. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to go sit and, for another 4 years in school. Yet I can always go back to school. I grew up near Dartmouth, so I knew it's like I could go to school at any time. So that's my story.
Thank you. So what I listen for in stories, not exclusively, but what I listen for are the emotions. Because of course, music is the art of emotion, is so powerfully, right? So if you were to take me on just kind of go through that story again, what were the emotions that were there for you? I mean, I heard some of them as you were sharing, but just take me on an emotional journey as you go through that story.
Right. So I would say that to begin with, while I was making my list, I was excited. I was curious. I love researching things. It's one of my favorite things to do. And making lists and all that kind of thing. And then analyzing them. It's like, which would be better for this and for that? So I remember that kind of excitement and curiosity. Like, wow, where will it be? And then when I was going to sleep, when I went downstairs to go turn the heat on, I didn't want to like go load the stove and make a lot of noise and wake everybody up. So I just went and turned the heat on, and I was like, didn't really think anything of it because that was like pretty normal when, certain conditions are there. So there's nothing really unusual about that. And then going back up to bed and being really tired and being a little bit surprised. It's like that I want to say quality, but it isn't really a quality, but that the qualities of what that felt like. It felt like literally, it felt like dead weight. Essentially, that's what was happening. I was dead tired. I used dead tired in my mind. I'm like, wow, I must be really dead tired. And then like just feeling myself sort of sinking into the mattress, which was very unusual. But I didn't really pay it any mind because, whatever.
Yeah.
And then just the fear and confusion when my brother came in and he's like, call our neighbor. And then just the horrible feeling of just like, I can't even move my arm to pick up the phone. Like, of course I want to help. So that was terrifying to just be like, what is happening? And I must have gone out at that point. And then they're like dragging me down the stairs and they go boom, 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 boom. I remember that part. I remember being put out the door and just being like, what is going on? Just a lot of confusion. And then, and then sitting in the back of the car and having that realization, like, wow, I didn't really know what had happened still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether there was still danger. In fact, we were told later from the EMTs that they were pretty sure they were going to have a dead on arrival situation with all of us, and that we wouldn't even maybe make it to the hospital because we're kind of country. And of course I didn't know that at the time, but I learned it later.
Wow.
And my step parents and parents is complicated in terms of the people involved, but I ended up being the person to tell my biological mother, who was not there at the time, and my stepfather, who was also not there at the time because they were on vacation. So I was the person that called and said, we're all okay, but we want to let you know that we've just been in the hospital and we almost nearly died. And
wow, yeah.
I guess you should know, right? So it was just really, really confusing and upsetting. And then I felt like over time, when I chose to go on and do my other things, and I did my senior year abroad for high school, and then went into my career early as an artist and started showing in my 20s in New York in Soho and stuff. I just was like, there's a little part of me that's like, oh, I missed out on like all that cool college stuff, like the dorm rooms and making new friends and all that kind of thing. But I didn't regret the choice. You know what I mean? I was, and then later I got a master's degree and I could skip college. I didn't even have to do the college part because my career was so, it was adequate to establish that I could go on and get a master's in creative practice. So
yeah.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So the only thing I want to clarify, it was when you were sitting in the car, even though you didn't know what had happened yet, that's when you had this kind of epiphany that you want to go and live your life, right?
Yeah. It was like really clear to me, like, wow, if our lives can be like snuffed out like that so instantaneously. I mean, we often say, you can't know that you're going to have tomorrow. You could be hit by a bus or whatever. God forbid that it happens. Yeah. But it just really became very, very real to me.
Yeah.
And really important to me to make sure that I don't waste my time here, and that, in thinking about this story today, I was thinking, dare I say that, yeah, it's important for me. And I think I've lived my life this way for the most part since that event, that I might flub up the way I want to say this. It might not come out the right way at first time. I want to make every minute matter. Every part of my life matters, right? And I don't want to wait. And I have said this a couple of times, like, I've had the realization that, like, if, again, God forbid, my life were to end today or tomorrow or next week or 25 years from now, whatever, I want to be okay. Like, I want to have no regrets. Like, I've lived my life well. I'm proud of what I've done. I cherish the connections that I've made, and so relationships really matter to me, and my work and what I'm saying in my work really matters to me, much more than like fame or fortune. I'm okay with that. I'd be happy to have that as well. But the priority is enjoying my life and enjoying and having quality relationships, quality time, quality experiences. So I think that was the gift of that experience for me.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to create out of that, but let's see what happens.
I have faith in you.
All right. So just sit back and listen. When I change to the piano, you will be muted, so you don't have to worry about making sounds or anything.
That was beautiful, Craig. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love how music and painting can be so abstract. It can take a lot of complexity or complex story or elements and put them together in something that conveys the feeling of it and the brightness or the bright and dark and light of it without it being so specific, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that so much.
Hmm. I had fun with that one. That was a good story to play to.
Yeah. Tell me what markers you use if you are willing to share that part, like your process for that.
Well, I was thinking mostly about, the curiosity and the excitement at the beginning. So I was kind of using, a major key and hanging it out in the top range of the keyboard a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then you turned the heat on and you started feeling heavy, and so
Right.
that's when I went down lower and started getting a
Yeah.
little bit, oh.
Right. And there's some weird discordant sounds a little bit in
Yes.
there, a couple of
Yes.
those.
Yeah. And then it kind of picked up a little bit when your brother came in. So there was this, it was still heavy and dark, but there was this urgency to it.
Yeah.
And then once you were out in the car, it shifted to the major again and got more positive and kind of almost like, resolute's not the right word, but there was a certain, I'm going to live my life like this.
Yeah.
That was
It
kind of
does.
what I was thinking as I played.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Came through, it's like could definitely feel the sense of hope and I mean the word resoluteness, like I am committed to living
Yeah.
my life. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. That may be a better way of saying it. I'm committed to it.
Yeah. No time to waste.
It's not
Let's
like
get
you're
going.
going to war, but
Right. No,
yeah.
we're getting out. We're doing our thing here. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks. No one's ever asked me to do that. So it was kind of interesting to try to think back and see what was going on in my head as I played. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for indulging me with the question.
Yeah. Um, I know for myself that I want people to hear about some of the things that you're up to. I'd like us to take the next portion for you to do that.
Okay.
And whatever you like, there's so many places where you are exploring. So let us know.
Yeah. Okay. When I was listening, I was also, pondering the like what are the sort of I don't know how to put it exactly. Like what are the outcomes from that like that incident in my life and and does it have anything to do like did it actually so it's just a question I have. Does that incident and neither of us know the answer, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Does that incident have an influence on the things that I've chosen to do as an artist, an activist, environmentalist, um, an empowerment coach, a consultant, counselor, like all the things that I've done where I create space basically for people to share their stories and their incidents of challenge and sometimes they're still in the midst of it. I did a lot of my early social practice art. I used to just do a lot of paintings, right? Well, a lot of industrial landscape paintings to begin with, and then I started doing more beautiful bucolic paintings. There's one of them behind me here, that way, I guess.
Yes.
Big oil and canvas piece, and then I guess I got to go that way.
I think I've
Very
seen that before. That looks familiar to me, and I like
yeah.
it. I like it a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then, so I was doing a lot of work in that way, and was thinking a lot about the environment, and when I was doing those industrial landscapes. So instead of a beautiful landscape like that, you would have like a big imposing structure of I don't know, different silos and fuel oil storage tanks and stuff like that, where I would photograph these sites and then I would paint these paintings. And they're all pretty representational, but still very moody. And I was always like intrigued, like, what are they hiding from us? What are those secrets that are being kept by that company? You know, these big corporations that are basically polluting the land and the water and the air, and, you know, even their personnel, obviously, like if they're working in that environment, they're also going to be ill. And so, yeah, just, I don't know. I've spent a lot of my life being like, let's look at this stuff. Let's shine a light on the stuff that's being hidden, right? And part of that also comes from my own experience growing up as a girl, and having people abuse their power and take advantage of me and stuff like that. And seeing that exist in the world and being confused by that, and then being like, no, I don't think other people should be able to, should have to experience that. I don't think people should be able to get away with that. And so a lot of my work was very activist oriented around sexual assault, domestic violence, and childhood sexual assault and stuff like that. And working with people who had been through those experiences as I had. And I think maybe actually I'm thinking this, maybe my willingness to take a stand for things and to talk about things that are taboo, secret, no one's supposed to talk about these things, is partly because, well, if not now, when, right? If not me, then who? Okay, so I don't see other people doing it that much in terms of where I was in my community. So it's kind of like, what do I have to lose? And a lot of people, and I would see it in my community here, like business owners would be like, well, I can't really talk about, you know, this. I can't really take a stand on, you know, not allowing the town to build affordable housing on a brownfield, for example. It's like, oh, well, why can't you? Why can't you take a stand on that? Do you agree that it shouldn't happen? Yeah, I agree it shouldn't happen. So why can't you take a stand on that and sign a petition or show up at the meeting or whatever? And they, you know, they didn't want their businesses to be impacted, or their kid, you know, if it's some other issue, maybe their kids were in the public school, or maybe their kid, you know what I mean? Like, so I had kids in public school, and in private schools as well. And I had a business, but I was still willing to take the risk. And I don't know, I wonder if that is related to having had that experience. It's like, we only live once, and I choose to do what I can, right? And so, you know, we go back to being in Wealth and Impact boot camp together. That's how I got to know you. And a lot of my focus, as you know, was on art and climate action. And that was inspired by a trip to Antarctica. I mean, I was always doing art and climate action stuff and environmental stuff, but when I took a trip to Antarctica and had that experience that you know about, where I was crawling on the glacier in the long white gown, was Terraluna, and my performance there just became very like, this is urgent. And for whatever reason, I feel compelled to be a person that engages with people in these tough issues and make it okay to talk about, because it's important. We can't change anything until we acknowledge it, talk about it, get creative about how we can solve situations, change the status quo, you know, all that kind of thing. So those are a couple of the things. And then, so things I'm working on. It's like it says in my bio, there's a lot of social change. You know, how do we get people to think differently? Let's talk about the environment. Yes, I agree that we are beyond a certain tipping point, and that we are probably going to have, you know, continue to have climate crises. And so we can't stop that. We can't reverse it. But we're creative beings. We are humans with
Yes.
a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
And our job is to create solutions. Like, how can we live together? How can we support, encourage, and protect people who are really most vulnerable, right? They don't have necessarily the same safety nets that a lot of us do have. And so I think that's vitally important.
Yeah.
And
It's making me think of a book I just started reading called Less is More. Are you aware of that book?
no, but it's one of my
Oh.
favorite sayings.
It's powerful. That the whole introduction is kind of an overview of the state of the planet.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's alarming. Like
Yes.
it's not like I didn't hear things I haven't heard before, but having it presented the way it was presented, compressed like that, it was like we've got to act.
Right.
You know?
And so I'm curious, actually, because that's a really important point. And I think that's where I was going is, so how did you feel? Did you feel compelled to do something? Did you feel hopeless or helpless?
I don't feel helpless. Certainly after reading that chapter, it was, you know, and I've just started the book, but I'm told that it actually has a positive kind of perspective on where we can go with this.
Right,
So
right,
I'm very curious to see, but a lot of it is around our relationship to the world. And,
right.
that's like the fundamental problem, this separation of us from the planet. And so we objectify it, and that way there's no problem just taking from it without giving back.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
us, it's that,
Yeah.
you know?
And disregarding the fact that, first of all, we rely on it
Yeah,
just to even exist.
yeah.
And it is us, we are it, And I just came across an artist statement that I wrote for a painting that similar to this one that you saw a number of years back, and also by the lake. I would go and trace like raccoon tracks in the sand on the beach, and I would spend hours in the woods and just felt so um, in communication somehow with nature, with the water, with the leaves, with the dirt, with the trees, like all of it. And as Terraluna, when I've done all of these trance performances, so I'm in a trance when I'm doing these. I feel funny calling it a performance because it's not like there's a ticketed event and people know when I'm going to do it. I don't even really know what's going to happen. So I wouldn't try to get anyone there to see what's going to happen. But I get this guidance from the dress that I wear, that long white gown, which I've named Terraluna, where the name came to me. And if she says, I want you to float down the river in Maine, I'm floating down the river in Maine. If I'm crawling on the glacier, I'm crawling on the glacier. If I'm crawling through the desert in Nevada, that one I was a little bit worried about because scorpions,
Yes, I think I remember you telling me about
rattles,
that.
I was like, there are some serious dangers in that. Um, but even though I don't really understand what Terraluna is saying, I do know that it's about connecting us to
Yes.
Earth,
Yeah.
to nature, and it's important to it's important somehow. I mean, however, she's conveying something through her actions. I just happen to be the body that's in the dress, but I'm not. It's not what's between. It's not what's in my mind that's saying this is what you should do. So therefore, I don't really know what she's saying, why she's saying it that way. However, my sense is that she's making an impact, and she's capturing people's imaginations
Hmm.
and curiosity. Curiosity is one of my favorite words. And so then they might slow down and say, oh, hey, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And then what's our part in it? What's our part in
Yeah.
it? And along with that Terraluna work, I've done a lot of like large scale temporary wall drawings in museums and galleries and other places. And they're usually beautiful landscapes done with powdered graphite on the wall directly. And then it's not finished until it's destroyed and erased. It's usually painted out. And there's a ceremony around that whole process. So it might take 3 weeks to create. It might be up for 3 to 6 months in the exhibition. And then it might take, a few hours to have a ceremony and close it and end the piece by destroying it. And people would get really upset about the fact that this piece was going to be destroyed. And so
it's interesting, isn't it?
Right? Yeah. And I said, well, what makes my art any more valuable than this land that's just been clear cut for another Walmart just up the street from the Walmart that's already there? Why is my artwork any more valuable or important than that piece of land that's being destroyed right now? And they would be like, oh, wow. So my hope is that they would say, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe I should get on a select board or a zoning board and be a person who votes against those kinds of things, right? Because it's not the individuals who are responsible for all the stuff that's going on with the climate crisis, right? Like it was the corporations that made that up, that, you need to do better. You need to recycle. You need to do this. The carbon footprint thing, corporations made that whole thing, that idea up to put the blame on us. But really, it's the industries that need to change. And I guess my feeling is like, if we can feel empowered or capable of doing a simple thing, like not buying bottled water anymore, for example, and just carrying around your own water bottle, that's just a really simple thing. That's not going to change the crisis at all. I totally know that. However, that becomes a habit. What other habit can I do? Yeah. And then that habit becomes something that I bring into my life. Then what do I feel more capable of doing? Well, maybe I could show up at one of these meetings and say, hey, I don't think it's a good idea to put the affordable housing on that brownfield over there. I don't think that's a good idea. And be willing to say so. And then ultimately, maybe I would, or someone else would, choose to actually be a voting member of that board that gets elected, right? And so on. And, then we go from local to statewide to nationwide or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, I guess that's what drives me.
Yeah.
And then related to all of these things.
Actually, just give me 1 second. For those who are listening, this won't mean anything, but I'm disappearing into the dark. So I'm going to just turn my light back on.
Yeah. Turn your light. Yes. We want more light.
It may put that bad reflection on the picture, but now I can see myself.
Yeah. Want to see you. And that's a great segue into what I was just about to say, which is about visibility, right? So, thinking back to I'm just having like this sort of like wow moment. Thinking back to carbon monoxide, invisible.
Mm-hmm.
The early industrial landscapes I was talking about. What's hidden there? They're keeping it invisible. They're hiding information from us. They're not telling us the whole story. And then, all of our emotions and dreams, hope, love, thoughts, action, communication, all invisible things. And so, as you know, I think I created a creative research platform called the Invisibility Lab in 2016, and then officially launched it in 2017 in Berlin. And I have so enjoyed just exploring what is invisible and what who is invisible and why, what are the circumstances, and then bringing engaging with people to get their stories about that. And that's another whole big project I could talk to you. We could do another whole session on that one. Because interestingly, it was started in 2016 when Trump was canvassing, right? He was rallying for, to become president. And I was really worried about a lot of my neighbors and family and friends being targeted by him. And sure enough, I mean, many of them were terrified to go to the doctors, to go buy groceries. A lot of, immigrants specifically, people of color were like, I'm worried about going out, and so there's this whole safety issue. And here we are again. Can you believe it?
Here we are again. Yeah.
I can't believe it. So connecting and bringing people together and being able to connect with people at levels that have to do with heart, art, communication, putting all the politics aside as much as possible to be able to find the places where we can connect.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love all that you're doing. It's important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, I am creating a 23-part musical score based on all of the participants who have taken part in my invisibility lab over the years. And I'm pretty excited about that. It's called Sounding the Archive. And it's a very elaborate project because I need to ascertain what are the emotional qualities of each of these answers and how will I translate that into music and create a soundscape for stage as well as for museum and gallery installations. So that's another project that I'm working on. I'm very excited about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So Invisibility Lab and Terraluna. I mean, people could find out about these things on my website if they want.
Oh, and I'll get those links from you so I can put them in the podcast description.
Yeah. Yeah. A good starting place would just be GabrielleSenza.com because it lists the 3 projects basically that I just spoke about.
Great. So it's like kind of a place to go to get to all of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Gabrielle, thank you again. Thank you for your story. Thank you for what you're up to and sharing all of that with us. I really appreciate it. And we didn't say where we are. We're on the opposite side of the continent.
I know, actually. I did want to say that. We're on the opposite sides of the country and in different countries.
Yes.
Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts.
Yeah. And I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's one of the things I love about technology.
I know, me too. Me too. It's a nice thing.
Yeah.
I love that you are doing these you're also basically translating data. You're translating a story.
Yeah.
Musically.
Yeah. I never get tired of it. It's fun.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. What a gift to be able to do that. I'm glad you shared your process too, because sometimes I see artists who are painting abstractly and I don't know, I admire like, wow, how do you make that? How do you kind of unlearn the prescribed ways of doing things, right? Or the traditional classical ways of doing things and move that over so that you can create something new that is obviously more abstract, And in the abstraction, I think we can travel more in that space.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, you reference, you were questioning the word performance when you were sharing about Terraluna. And I've always made that distinction when I do an under the piano session. For me, it's not a performance. It's a co-creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very distinct from a performance.
It is. It's not even, and interestingly, you cannot practice for it.
No.
You can only do it,
Yeah.
right?
That is the practice, is doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the practice. Yeah, and one of the destroying ceremonies, the create and destroy for the Terra Temporalis or Antarctica Temporalis wall drawings I spoke of, I sometimes will bring my, not my piano, my cello, and I'll just play in conversation, essentially, a conversation meditation with the drawing that I have created. It's lived and grown and been there in that space, saying whatever it needed to say to the people who came and visited it. And then I needed to say goodbye and to sort of thank it for being there and for inspiring me and hopefully inspiring other people. And I could never tell you what it was I played. I could never recreate it, right? It's happening in that moment. So
Yeah.
I love that you're doing this and people get to experience that. It's really special.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Until next time. Thank you for tuning in to Stories from Under the Piano. If today's episode resonated with you, consider booking your own personal Under the Piano session. It's available both in person and online. Experience the transformative power of music, tailored just for you, featuring several personalized compositions that capture the essence of your stories. Learn more and book your session at craigaddy.com. Let's create something beautiful together.